This sport, man, I don't know how you explain it to newcomers, but we try. This is America's college football show. At least we try to be. We're jam-packed high atop a very on edge downtown Nashville, Tennessee on this Thursday night, December 11th, the year of our Lord 2025. We got some football-related serious stuff. We got some real-world-related serious stuff. We are T-minus 8 days and counting until the college football playoff kicks off. I've got talks of expansion that, of course, we will hammer unmercifully like the piñata that it is on tonight's show. Is everybody a contender in that thing, by the way? Certainly we don't think JMU or Tulane are going to win the national title. But outside of that, if the best of best to best case scenarios happened, could everyone win it? I see you shaking your head no. I picture you shaking your head no. I'll give you my take on that. Cubelic's going to join us in a little while. We got a jam-packed show. And look at that. There's a bracket right there in the bottom of my notes. They're watching us in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Racine, Illinois, Dayton, Ohio, Tulsa, Oklahoma. We are, for those of you who are new around here, well, first off, we're appreciative that you're here. This is just college football all year long. Happy you stumbled upon the show. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Recently, we reached a milestone around here. We hit 500,000 subscribers. It's a tough word to say fast. So that means 1 million subscribers is our next benchmark. And I'm not saying we won't celebrate. We won't golf clap ourselves when we hit 600K, but I mean, we're a proper show. So 1 million, that's the club we want to be in. And now it's going to get pretty heavy. So let's dive in. Michigan fired Sharon Moore yesterday being Wednesday, for those of you who are watching this replay sometime down the road. And I did a reaction video on the channel, so if you're wondering, that initial video, which did bonkers traffic, is on the channel already, but I'm going to lead the show with it again. This was a really, really wild thing that happened Wednesday, and I want to address something. So myself and a lot of other people had heard versions of rumors of what ended up coming to fruition at Michigan. And a lot of people listened to me say that in the video that I posted on the channel, and they said, well, isn't that a little bit unethical by you? If you knew what was happening, why didn't you report it? Let me address that. Number one, because I didn't fully know what was happening. I heard some stuff. You hear a lot of stuff around here, guys. If you just ran your mouth about everything you heard, the show wouldn't exist because the courts would have sucked us dry already because we would be taken to them regularly. So I didn't know what was happening. I heard and had on pretty good authority that something had happened, but it's very obvious even within Michigan circles that in the last week, and I've confirmed all this since then, within the last week, certain additional events transpired that made it pretty obvious what had happened, and now Sharon Moore is out of a job. And then you had the whole mess that happened last night. I don't want to make light of it. It's just not football related, where Sharon Moore ends up in handcuffs, and we've got like a real-world incident unfolding, paralleling a football incident unfolding. So I don't want to make light of that. But number two, I'm not a reporter, okay? I'm not an investigative journalist. So that's the other reason that I didn't really take a deep dive down that well. To be very clear, like my stance on this show, when I hear that a guy may be on the way to being fired, is to wait for him to be fired. Because a lot of times you hear rumors and they are unsubstantiated and they don't come to fruition. And other times they do, but what would you have gained by running your mouth about him? And thirdly, if I need a third rail here, a lot of times information is given to you on the condition that you shut up about it. So those were the reasons why I didn't run with it when I originally, quote unquote, had it. So this is really, really shocking. I said on the reaction video that I did last night, which was shot in my kitchen, by the way, I said the take on Sharon from people that I know around Michigan for a couple of years had been he was sort of viewed as a bridge head coach. It's disrespectful. It may be unfair, but I'm just telling you, that's not my words. Those are the words of people around the Michigan program, in that you're coming out of this Harbaugh era where there was an ongoing NCAA investigation and they needed a head coach. And Sharon stepped in and he beat Ohio State a couple of times, and he was there as long as the fog hadn't lifted. But then the fog lifted, and the NCAA sanctions and the NCAA investigation, rather, came and went. And then you entered this season, and you're pretty free and clear, right, this last season. and you go 8-4, no, you go 9-3. If you went 8-4, it may be a little bit different. It is my theory, and this is just me speculating, to be clear. I have not been told this. It is my speculation that had they gone 8-4 or worse, they may have just fired him for performance-related reasons. He had a small buyout. It's not like they couldn't afford to, but they went 9-3. So there was not going to be any firing Sharon Moore for going 9-3, but yet people still looked at him and said, that's not our long-term answer. I said in the video, I'll say it one more time. The way it was explained to me was, look, think about Sharon. If he was just on the open market right now, how desirable would he be? And I mean, look, without being disrespectful, like I think we understand what they're saying there. So he was not viewed as the long-term solution at Michigan. Then this whole scandal gets dropped in their lap. And aside from performance-related reasons, it gives them another out. But it's not like this did Michigan some great favor, because this is a mess for Michigan. And this is, again, I want to reemphasize this. This is speaking about strictly the football side of this, because there's a whole other side that is a little bit too heavy for this show, and it doesn't directly relate to Michigan football moving forward, at least as far as I talk about it. So I say all that to arrive at this point. Where will Michigan football go from here? Pete Nakos, sit on 3, has put out his hot board, and it looks like most people's hot boards will probably look. You're going to hear the name Kalen DeBoer. Brian Kelly is on that hot board. I would be very surprised, personally, if Lincoln Riley was attached to this job. But Jesse Minter is with the Chargers right now. Eli Drinkwitz, Jed Fish, Clark Lee, Kenny Dillingham. I mean, I would take a swing at some of these guys. Tommy Reese there. I don't really ever think it got out. Penn State looked at Tommy in their search. Willie Fritz at Houston. So, yeah, that's Pete's hot board right now. I think they're still getting their affairs in order. I don't really think a hire is imminent. Now, this stuff changes on a dime, but I don't think a hire is imminent, and the reason for that is I think Michigan kind of has to figure out what they're going to do internally first. And Michigan's got a situation where you got an interim president. Michigan's got a situation right now where, Ward Manuel has been the AD there, and some people view him one way and other people view him the other way. But what's undeniable is there has been a lot of extracurricular, a lot of scandal, a lot of black eye under Ward Manuel's watch there. Is he going to be the guy moving forward? Is he the AD there? Is he the one that's making the decision? And I'm asking this because I think that's really what it comes down to. So I was on Get Up this morning. Schefter's on there, Michigan guy. Greeny's on there. We're tossing this stuff back and forth, and that was the talking point. Like, those were the lanes that we were talking about. We were talking about how do you react to what happened, and then we were talking about where are they going to go from here. And most of the time in college football, when a coach is fired, that's immediately what you pivot to. You'll have all spring and summer to talk about the guy who was fired. Where are they going to go from here? And I think in this specific case, and I'm going to have Bradley tee it up in just a second, in this specific case, that is not the first question that I'm asking with Michigan. Here's the first question I'm asking.
Adam Schefter put it very, very succinctly there when he said there are layers to this and it's very complicated and there are a lot of gray areas. For example, who's going to lead the search? Who's in charge? Do I have a permanent president on the horizon? Is Ward Manuel, who, all due respect to Ward, has been athletic director over an athletic department that has had several scandals over the past few years, going to be the one running point now and moving forward? I'm asking questions not from myself. I'm giving you the kind of feedback I got from agents and coaches over the past 24 hours who may or may not be involved in this kind of search, because you are right, Greeny. That is one of the premier brands in college football. In a vacuum, it's one of the best jobs in college football. These guys want certainty, and these guys want alignment, and you can't promise me you've got it right now in Michigan. So until those questions get answered behind the scenes, it's really hard to put a coaching hot board together. Kenny Dillingham, Kalen DeBoer, anybody worth their salt is going to want those questions answered before they even start to go down the road of taking that job.
So I will not shy away from speculating about who the next coach is going to be there when I think it's time to do that. I don't know that it's time to do that yet. I really think they're still moving around some things internally, and they got to decide, is Ward making this call? Is a search committee going to make the call? Is it a combination of all of the above? And the other thing I wonder, which to an extent I could say about any coaching search, but especially this one, is how long is the list? And then where's the line on the list? And the line is the point you get to on the list where you look and say, well, if we've gotten this far down the list, we might as well just go with an interim coach for the upcoming season and then really get our affairs in order internally. And then, we'll just be ready to emerge in the summer and early fall into a full boots on the ground, year-long coaching search. That is not ideal, obviously. That's not what you want to do. But I think we all know the Michigan job. Hey, you'll get to a certain spot on your list where this guy will gladly take it. The question is that guy really cut out to be the head coach of Michigan? And if the answer is no, you went too far down your list, and you just need to regroup and conduct your search in the fall of 2026. So that's where that is right now. A lot of twists and turns probably coming on that front, which just means if you are twisting and you are turning, you could be in a vehicle which could need some gasoline, which could mean, no, definitely means you need to head to Quick Trip. They are the presenting partner of this show. They fuel the whole new Saturday tour. They fueled the Fall Don't Lie tour. They fueled the Once Upon a Saturday tour. They fueled all of our tours. The Fall Don't Lie tour just happens to be the one that we're on right now. We are going to head to 2 games next weekend. We announced it way ahead of time. We're going to head to Norman Friday night for Alabama at Oklahoma. And then we're just going to right on down to College Station, land in Billy Lucci's backyard in the middle of the night, and we are going to be at Kyle Field for Miami versus Texas A&M that Saturday morning, 11 a.m. kickoff time there. I think they're going to be electric environments. Those are 2 places that have never hosted a playoff game because they've only been able to for 1 year. So, yeah, that's going to be intense, and cold brew on tap along the way, proudly served by Quick Trip. We thank them so much. We continue. We had a question from Buckley down in Talmo, Georgia, and he said, who are the contenders and pretenders for teams in the playoff? Now, I'm going to take this to mean who can win the national title, Buckley. Really, I always hated in March Madness how someone said, ooh, that team right there, that team could go on a run. What does that mean? Win 1 game? Win 2 games? What is a run? Jesse, what would you say a run is? Winning 2 games in the NCAA tournament? That, to me, is a run. Like, could Florida Gulf Coast go on a run? Yeah, well, I guess they went on a run. So, like if, let's say, Ole Miss, if they win 2 games, is that a run? No. At least I'm not going to define it that way. So I'm looking at my handy-dandy bracket here. I'm saying how many of these teams can win a national championship? And I've got to tell you, this is going to seem like a really, really cop-out answer, but I think most of them can. To varying degrees of difficulty, most of them can. Here's my thinking behind this. James Madison's not winning the national title. Tulane's not winning the national title. Eliminate them. There are 10 teams on this graphic right here. Oklahoma's got the worst odds of the 10 teams, all the way up to Ohio State having the best odds at FanDuel of the 10 teams. But I think there is at least an outside shot that every one of them could, if things break their way, win the national title because of 2 things. Number one, we've seen Ohio State bleed. That's the first part. That was the big question. Is Ohio State really just going to continue to look invincible? If so, it's a moot point. Well, they did not continue to look invincible. So Ohio State's mortal. And then also, we are in an era where the best teams are like a touchdown worse than the best teams used to be. It used to be that we got to the end of the year, remember in the 4-team playoff era, and you'd struggle to find a 4th team that could really compete with whoever number 1 or number 2 was. That is not the case anymore. The best teams, like Ohio State, let's call them the best team in the country right now. This Ohio State team against the best Alabama or Clemson or Ohio State teams from a decade ago, or this Georgia team versus Georgia teams from even 5 years ago. Those teams from yesteryear are a touchdown plus favorite just because the talent has dispersed itself a little bit further around the country, which means that you have more vulnerability, relatively speaking, from the top teams. So, like if I'm looking up and down the list here, certainly I would still favor Ohio State, just like FanDuel does, but look at Miami. Miami, could they technically win a national title? It would not be the biggest shock to me. They do have the toughest path. Because if you look at the bracket, Miami will have had to go to A&M, and then I'm just going to say probably on all this, they would definitely play Ohio State. And if they get through those 2, then you've got Georgia, and then you got like Oregon or Indiana. The trade-off for Miami, if they can survive all that, is they do get to play Oregon or Indiana or whoever comes out of that side of the bracket at home, because the national title game is in Hard Rock Stadium. So Miami would at least have that in their backyard. Defensive line, big potential mismatch here. Carson Beck at his best. He's been in a ton of big games. Probably don't need to score 40 to win with that defense. So, yeah, I could see it. I could see Oregon winning this thing. I think Oregon has the best path of all the playoff teams. I would love to be in Oregon's spot in the bracket. Let me put it that way. More so than any other spot in the bracket. Wide receiver health is key here. Remember also, both of their coordinators took other jobs. Will Stein took the Kentucky job. Tosh Lupoy took the Cal job. Believe they're still coaching, but you've got the split attention that you're having to deal with. And I go back to the health. Like, I don't know how many guys they're getting back, at what level they're getting them back, but just from a pure 50,000-foot talent roster perspective, Oregon is one of the best in the game, and they experienced blowout heartbreak in the playoff last year. How much did they retool themselves to try and peak at the right time? Texas A&M, tough opening round game against Miami. It's a tough path for them because they'll have to go the same route Miami would have to go. Cassius Howell is a big potential game wrecker in this playoff. That several of the biggest game wrecker types defensively in this playoff field play in that Miami A&M game. Wide receiver, specifically the explosivity with like a Mario Craver. He didn't quite look like himself to me down the stretch. I think we all understand very few guys are playing at near 100% down the stretch. So how much did the time off mean to him? How dynamic can Marcel Reed be? He has the potential to be that. They have the potential. They have the most versatile, like Swiss Army knife-ish talent profile of many of these teams, if not all of these teams. Alabama, if you're going by what you saw as of late from them, they are a pretender. The reason that I'm not totally willing to just remove them is because I picked them to win the national title in the preseason, and it's hard for me to let go. And then the second part is, if they had a bunch of guys that were really, really banged up, but really all they needed was 2 weeks, then Alabama can still, beat a lot of teams. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'm saying I have no way of knowing if it's not. So if Parker Brailsford, for instance, at center is back to 90+%, if they get Jam Miller back, if they're able to utilize the tailback out of the backfield in the passing game, if they're able to scratch out 100, 110 rushing yards, if Ryan Williams reemerges as a big threat, Josh Cuevas, if they get him back for the postseason, going to be close games. They play solid defense. They've been really good in that category. So, yeah, Alabama, if they go on the road and they beat Oklahoma, they're playing Indiana in the second round, you're going to have roster advantages over these teams, or do you have execution advantages? Do you have matchup advantages? That's the big question with them. Oklahoma is just all about defense. Oklahoma's got the worst odds, I just think, because you cannot be bought in on their ability to score, and you're going into a playoff setting where you're asking them to win 1, 2, 3, 4 games where, unless something drastic has changed, you probably need to hold the other guy under 20. Now, that's a challenge that Oklahoma's defense relishes, but still, 1 game versus doing that 4 games, much different thing. Texas Tech is the one I'm kind of morbidly just curious about watching because the defensive line personnel is there. The takeover, the game-breaking potential is there. I hadn't seen him in a bunch of close games, and you're not blowouting your way through the playoff. So what is their close game DNA? When it comes time to prove that, I can't know that. They're top 25 offensively run and pass. So they're balanced enough. They're complementary enough, plenty complementary enough defensively. It's just how do they play when they're not playing Big 12 competition, basically? Because the Big 12 was them and everyone else this year, and now they're playing everyone but the Big 12 in the playoff. Ole Miss, another wild card. But I technically wouldn't eliminate him. I would technically make him a contender. Staff dynamics are everything there. You may have the most draftable quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss, out of all the quarterbacks in this postseason. Certainly, Mendoza's the Heisman favorite. Julian Sands looked really good this year. But Marcel Reed, turnover prone. Ty Simpson tailed off significantly at the end of the year. Don't really think you'd look elsewhere. Beck's been up and down. Dante Moore's been up and down. Trinidad Chambliss been mainly up. Indiana, of course, is a contender. Don't really need to spend a whole lot of time on them. In fact, Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia, all three, I would say, are contenders. With Georgia, because I don't really need to talk about Indiana and Ohio State. With Georgia, they went in the playoff last year. Remember, Beck got hurt, so Gunnar Stockton had to start, and they got beat by Notre Dame, and that's it. I wonder, out of all the SEC teams, if they really do have the best shot to win it all. They'll have the best odds. Do they have the best shot to win it all? So we're still a week out. We can still ask these questions. We don't have to predict until, well, I think we're going to start predicting on Sunday. Meridian, Mississippi is tuned in. Thank you. Charlotte, North Carolina tuned in. Thank you. St. Paul, Minnesota tuned in. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Speaking of our close, dear friend, the college football playoff, pardon me for a second there, we had a question, unfortunately, from Bill. Bill in Carthage, Mississippi asked, do you really think more playoff expansion is coming? I hope not, but it feels like there is enough big teams missing to make it feasible. What a pathetic question. The question that I appreciate, by the way, Bill, it is the premise of the question and the fact that it's accurate that's pathetic. Because that's really where we are in college football right now. If someone's upset, they just cry hard enough and they're going to get their way. Yes, Bill, that pretty much looks like what's happening. You had some teams left out, and instead of taking the Clark Lee approach to life at Vanderbilt, which is we don't blame anyone, this is our fault, we need to do better next year, in other words, accountability. Instead of taking that approach, most people are taking the approach that if I didn't get something I wanted, it's because the system's messed up and we just need to adjust the system to appease me. Now, these same people would tell you you're acting like a child if you were to exhibit that sort of behavior outside of football, outside of athletics, but they don't exist in the real world. They exist in the world they created. So this was always my big fear. Back before they expanded the playoff, I was very outspoken. I didn't want playoff expansion. And I explained my reasons why. And some of you agreed, some of you didn't agree. But remember, one of the points I always hammered home was I don't support expansion because I don't think it'll ever stop. If you expand to 8, or especially if you expand to 12, they're going to look at it and they're going to make more money than they did before. And even if that first move doesn't negatively impact the regular season, they'll just keep expanding it until you kill what the regular season has been. Bigger playoff means more teams involved. That's part of the pitch. That's when they sell an expanded playoff, that's what they say. Oh, if you have a bigger playoff, you can get more teams involved and more fan bases are interested. To an extent, that's true. I do think there's a saturation point, and you expand it any further, you'll probably see the saturation point. But even if I grant you that, here's the downside. Here's the ever so slippery slope. The bigger the playoff bubble is, it is true, the more teams get in. It is true, the more teams have a shot. But the bigger the bubble gets, the more teams it touches, which means mathematically, the more teams and more fan bases you will have angry at the end of the year. The only way you minimize the amount of angry fan bases is to contract the bubble. But we don't contract in this sport. We only expand. So as we expand more teams get in, more teams have a shot, more fan bases are engaged, but more fan bases will be angry. Just like is the case at Texas and is the case at Vanderbilt and Brigham Young this year, Notre Dame this year. Last year it was South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss. This will be an age-old concept, tale as old as time. You're the first few teams left out. You're the ones that are most upset. And they yell a whole lot, and they have all the incentive in the world to yell for expansion, not because they think it's for the greater good of the game. It would be for the greater good of themselves. Now, if we had a college football commissioner, he could step in right now and say, suck it up. Win one more game next year. Do your job. It's not my job to expand to the point where even though you don't do your job well enough, you still get in. But we don't have that kind of presence because I haven't been elected yet. Anger is not a terrible thing. That's always been my working theory, whether it was 4 teams or 12 teams. Anger at the end of the year is not evidence that the model is broken. Now, having 2 G5 teams in the playoff, each 17-plus point underdogs, that may be a little evidence that the model is broken, but we can tweak that without having to expand the thing past 12. Anger is not evidence that 12 teams is not enough. Anger may be evidence that 12 teams is just right, because the size of the playoff, when it's proper, is always going to have anger. If you've expanded the playoff to the point where no one's upset, you expanded the thing way too far. But that's not in the best interest of an athletic director or a conference commissioner. And Ross Dellinger did a really, really good deep dive on this over on yahoosports.com yesterday. It kind of got caught up in the whole Sharon Moore hurricane of news. But Ross was talking to college football commissioners at the league level. He was talking to ADs, and they were this is going to shock everyone, they were pretty much in unison. Yep, we probably need to expand it again. And of course, you got the Big Ten out there with their asinine 24-team playoff model, and no one is anything less than 16, apparently it appears. Like, I didn't see a single person saying, let's just keep it at 12. The best I could find, I think, was the MAC commissioner saying 12's okay, but that was right after he said 14 or 16. But here's the problem. Bradley, you got that quote from the Ross Dellinger piece? Now, this is not a quote from anyone. This is Ross Dellinger himself speaking. And here's what he said. A move to 16 teams is seen by some as the next step in the evolution of the playoff that perhaps one day will grow to more than 20 teams, a compromise of sorts for Big Ten leaders. It's just the next step, guys. This has always been a process, and it's always been a series. It's always been a set of ladder rungs. That was what we cautioned about when we first got a whiff of playoff expansion, and I was very, very, very against it. And I was told, no, you just don't want more teams participating. You don't want to share the wealth. And it was never any of that. It was that I think the most precious commodity in the sport's the regular season, and every time you expand the playoff, it's done at the expense of the value of regular season games. And I freely admit the 12-team model has not killed the regular season. But as you can clearly see, the plan was never to stop at 12. The plan was to take the next step in the quote-unquote evolution to eventually get to a 20-plus team behemoth, because that's the only way these people know how to generate revenue, because they're not creative, they're not particularly inventive, and so they see this one thing that is a surefire moneymaker, and that's the playoff, and they just make it as big as they want at the expense of, well, they really don't care what at the expense of. To all the issues that the sport faces right now, calendar's a total mess. You can't even figure out whether or not you're going to collectively bargain with your players or whether you can get Congress to bail you out. All of the real problems facing this sport. We just had National Signing Day in the middle of Conference Championship Week, and we had a bunch of coaching searches happen because ADs felt the need to get ahead of that calendar. Oh, by the way, the portal opens during the playoff. All that and the size of the playoff is what you're focused on. Yes, because that is the big pressing matter at hand right now. I want to joke. We try not to be a joke over in the store, the Pate State store, patestateMaterial.com. Jesse has informed me, though, that Christmas is around the corner. I checked the calendar. He is right about that. We can confirm that. So, you may be thinking to yourself, that's still a couple of weeks away. That's true. If you are looking to order from the Pate State store and get that stuff guaranteed by Christmas, you need to get a move on, because we have a ton of traffic over there right now, and shipping can be an issue. But I can take care of you if you get your orders in now. PateStateMaterial.com. Great Christmas sweaters, great tees. You can get yourself a nice little coffee mug over there. Anything and everything you could imagine, with maybe a few exceptions, and even those may be coming soon. PateStateMaterial.com. All right, let's move on. What has become a great tradition around here, apart from Christmas itself in December. Bradley, here's a good endpoint for you. One of the great December traditions on this show is to dive into our spring/summer box of bold predictions that you guys submitted, because our policy around here is, if I've got to make predictions, you've got to make predictions. If I get drug after the season, you get drug after the season, and that's only fair. So all of you have signed that social contract, and boy, do I have some disasters on this piece of paper tonight. Bold prediction number one that crashed into the ocean, courtesy of Nick in Macomb, Michigan. Penn State has 2 1,000-yard receivers in the regular season. Well, Penn State did not even have a 500-yard receiver this season. Trevor Pena led the team with 452 receiving yards. In fact, the entire team only had a little over 2,100 receiving yards. Nick thought they'd have 2 1,000-yard receivers, and I know where your head was at, Nick. There was a lot of excitement went to the portal, got a couple of big-time receiver names. Also, we got Drew Aller back, and Andy Kotelnicki's just been cooking all spring and all summer, and yeah, they forgot to turn the stove on. I don't know what to tell you, man. Only one game this year did Penn State have a 100-yard receiver, and that was the Northwestern game, which they lost. So, abject failure on your part, Nick. But I love you. This is what it feels like. Welcome to my life. This is every day in my shoes. Next up, Sam tried to get creative here, and I do appreciate that. I respect that. That is where the respect ends, because his prediction was this year there will be more than 4 schools with a tiger as their mascot that make the college football playoff, which I guess means 5 schools with a tiger mascot make the playoff. I labeled this a 10 out of 10 on the boldness scale. We were looking at the likes of Auburn, Missouri, Memphis, Clemson, LSU. To spoil the ending for you here, 0 tiger mascots made the playoff. Memphis and Missouri went 8-4. Auburn went 5-7. Clemson and LSU went 7-5. There were more Green Waves and Dukes in the playoff than there were Tigers. There were more Red Raiders and Hoosiers in the playoff than there were Tigers. So that was a 10, and it was labeled a 10 for a reason. And then lastly, this one I never thought had a shot to get off the ground. This is why I labeled this one a 10 on the boldness scale as well. Danny from Dawsonville, Georgia, home of Bill Elliott. Fran Brown leads Syracuse to the playoffs this season. Well, I'll tell you what Fran Brown led Syracuse to. He led them to losing their final 8 games of the year en route to a 3-9 record. They did not score 20 in any of their final 8 games. Now, they lost to Tennessee to start the year, but then they won 2 straight, and then they went into Clemson and won. And that was a great day for Syracuse football. It's also the day they lost Steve Angeli for the season to injury. And then the season went off the rails after that, and look at those scores, 38-3, 31-18, 30-13. They, like I said, they did not hit 20 points in any moment the rest of the way. So Syracuse making the playoffs, Syracuse made it halfway to a bowl game. That's what Syracuse ended up doing. 5 schools with tiger mascots make the playoff, 0. Penn State has a couple of 1,000-yard receivers. Penn State did not even have a 500-yard receiver. These are busted bold predictions. Stand in the paint with me. I'm taking charge after charge. You guys need to stand here with me. If I'm going to have a miserable December, I think it's only right that some of you join me. And together, we can share our misery. That's what the holiday season is all about afterwards. That plus 30% profit boost on playoff future bets. Speak of the devil, here comes FanDuel. 30% profit boost on college football playoff future bets. So if you were listening to me earlier and you thought to yourself, he's right. He's right. A&M could make a run in the playoff. You should go bet it right now. You get a 30% profit boost on it. You know why? Because that's a college football playoff futures bet. You think you know the exact matchup in the national championship? You ought to go bet that. That qualifies as a college football playoff futures bet. So FanDuel, the exclusive odds provider of the show. Now, there are a lot of normal bets that you can make over there. I'm just telling you because we have this fancy little icon. Looks like a little Pokemon lightning bolt there. 30% profit boost on all of those college football playoff futures bets. Could come in handy at a time like this. Hey, not coming to you live from Birmingham, Alabama, but somewhere in the Northeast. No context clues could give it away there. Our close personal acquaintance, possibly sometimes a friend, Cole Cubelic. Sir, what do you think you're doing? What gives you the right? Where are you? Why are you dressed like you're applying for a loan?
I might need one. There may be things in my future that are going to require extra funds, and I might need assistance with that, but I'm not. In Charlotte for the SEC schedule release show tonight, myself, Roman Harper, Gene Chizik, Dari Noka will let you know who is playing who, when on the schedule, where they're going to be playing, and how things are going to line up. So it should be a good show tonight.
Remind me, is this a year where there are going to be 2 bye weeks or just 1 bye week?
No. It's one of those things when you look at these schedules, Josh, it was one of the first things I noticed. I was kind of going through them and I was sitting there, I was thinking to myself, like, all right, hold on, they got to go that many in a row? Like oh, wow, that's really difficult. You're going to see some 6, 7, 8 straight SEC game runs that some Southeastern Conference teams are going to go on next year. Daunting tasks. that some of these teams are going to. I'll say this, from what I've seen, the Missouri Ole Miss schedules that we've kind of pointed fingers at the last couple of years, gone.
Yeah, seesaw.
Not getting any of those anymore.
All right. Let me start with the Sharon Moore stuff. We already talked about it earlier in the show, but just I know you had to have hit this morning. You know Sharon Moore a lot better than me. I don't really even know him all that much. So how did this story strike you when it first started to break yesterday?
Shocking. We've taken him the Joe Moore Award 2 consecutive years here over the last few seasons. Had a chance to visit with him, talk to him about his style of coaching, got to know him as a person. We did speak a little bit more when he was just the offensive line coach and the head coach. Obviously, guys get busy. You don't talk to him as much, but developed a relationship with him over the years and never saw this coming. Never thought this was real. There had been some hints to this. Some individuals that I know may have alluded to this months ago. Still didn't think it was real. And then when some of the rumors started flying around, thinking, no, that's just not going to take place. I think we're always shocked when people that are in these positions with these type of opportunities presented to them, Josh, that something like this is just not going to take place. But from what I knew and what I had gotten to know, and I think the man that a lot of the general college football public had seen, the forward-facing portion of Sharon Moore, we didn't really think that this was possible either. And unfortunate ending to his tenure there as the Michigan head coach.
Do you look at this job the way I do? Like I look at the Michigan job. I think it's one of the premier jobs in the country in a vacuum. Obviously, this is not in a vacuum. This is with a lot of other circumstances thrown in, not to mention the calendar being where it is. Maybe some of the desirable candidates are in the playoffs. Maybe some of them are in the NFL in their own regular season. So, yeah, the timing's not ideal. I also look at the alignment or lack thereof, maybe some uncertainty about the administrative state up there. But I just think about the totality of the job, Michigan, how it compares. You and I are from the South. So someone in Detroit or Albany, New York, listening to us, like we have a little different slant on things than if we grew up in Big Ten country. I always thought of the Michigan job as like this beacon just shining on me from up north. Ohio State was that way as well. And like I always knew, even growing up in the South, man, that job, like all things equal, no scandal, no NCAA sanctions, I think I would leave Harris County, Georgia, to go up there and coach it. So then it gets into the real world application of you got like Kalen DeBoer's name that gets mentioned. And you got people who are listening to you in Birmingham who, of course, would not consider that because they may be from the South or they're Alabama fans. You got a little bit better worldview on this, though. Like, how do you view that job compared to some of the big jobs down in the SEC?
I grew up the majority of my life in Birmingham, Alabama, kind of like you referencing growing up in the South. We moved from Jackson, Mississippi when I was 2 years old. I was in love with SEC football at an early age. If you would have asked me at 14, 15, 16 years old, all I wanted to do was play in the SEC. My parents attended South Carolina. I had an aunt that played basketball at Clemson. I was much more familiar with that rivalry from a family perspective. But there's no way I could not have known the importance of Michigan football. And whether it was Desmond Howard striking the pose or Tim Biakabatuka or then going on in my college career, playing against Steve Hutchinson and Jeff Backus and Anthony Thomas and those guys, with Drew Henson playing quarterback, watching Tom Brady and what he did defeating Alabama the year before in the Citrus Bowl, like that brand is iconic. And it is known in college football circles as being iconic and one of the bigger brands that there is. That uniform, you could argue, the most recognizable uniform in sports, possibly. The historic players that have been through the big house itself, the stadium alone, the atmosphere alone. This is one of those jobs, Josh, that we might look at the condition that it's in. We may look at some of the fallout or the shrapnel that's going to come with what just happened there. But make no mistake, and you've referenced this with other jobs, and I believe that you would reference this one the same way. There will be candidates that we don't hear about that are highly interested in taking this job. Now, whether that plays out will be determined on their current situation, maybe how their team's season ends, other opportunities that are presented to them, how Michigan approaches them, whether they want to talk to them or not. But there will be candidates that people would be wowed by that are interested in this job. And that could just be, hey, agent, see where they are financially. What's the NIL situation looking like there? Let's take a little deeper look at this thing to see if we actually want to attack it or if it's just one that we're slightly interested in. At the end of the day, the drama that has been around it, the way that this thing ended, and the way that people might look at it and the slight tarnish that might be on it right now, Josh, it's the Michigan job. And that will hold clout And that will bring eyeballs in coaching circles, no matter when, no matter where it is, or no matter how it happened.
All right, I got the playoff bracket in front of me. We can talk about the G5 stuff some other time. Like I'm gonna assume you solidly lean Ole Miss and Oregon. So outside of those two games, you could either pick a matchup that is set, Miami A&M, Bama, Oklahoma. I'm told you're going to be at both of those games, by the way. Is that true?
There's a good possibility. It depends on the transportation situation, and that's just something it's never reliable. So you don't know what to expect. You play it by ear. Possible, I'd say.
Okay, fair enough. I wish you the best of luck, by the way. It's completely out of my hands, but I wish you the best of luck. So take some of those games that are slated, or maybe some games that you think could happen. Like it's a pretty good chance Ole Miss and Georgia is going to happen in round 2. Pretty good. Actually, I have no clue who you're going to pick in Miami and A&M, but either one of them is about to play Ohio State. Where does your finger, your little index finger, when you circle this bracket, where does it start to get drawn to?
There's some cool matchups we could talk about. Second round, third round, championship game. I can't get past Texas A&M and Miami, though. There's too much intrigue in that game for me. You have two offensive lines, maybe the best right tackle in college football, and Francis Managa at Miami that's going to be able to go up against Cassius Howell and some of those edge defenders for Texas A&M. Mark Fletcher, a back for that group that has been able to play ground and pound at times this season, going up against a really good Texas A&M defensive line. It's not just the edge defenders. Albert Regis and company inside can be just as destructive. A Texas A&M offensive line that has good football under their belt this year. It's been a little inconsistent. Part of that because they've played a lot of bodies. They've rotated guys. Not a lot of teams do that this day and age. But they'll be going up against Reuben Bain and Massador and company that can get after the quarterback and be disruptive against the run. And I think the most intriguing part of this game is not just the two quarterbacks and how we've seen great football from them. We've seen some mistake-laden football from those two. I think it's that the Miami secondary, if we're just talking about speed and athleticism, may have the best chance, possibly of anybody that A&M's played this year. Notre Dame's got some great corners, and that would be one that I would put into that mix. But they might have the best chance to be able to run with some of these A&M receivers than anybody they've played this year. And that's not a group that shies away from trying to hit you. They're not afraid to trade paint. They'll come down in the box and play the run. I just think when you go back and forth and look at the different aspects of this matchup, the different directions it could go, and it's going to come down to 1-2 guys that just have great games. Does Reuben Bain take this game over? Does Cassius Howell take this game over? Does the Texas A&M ground game that includes Marcel Reed and his legs take this game over? I just think just KC Concepcion take this game over. There are so many, I guess, takeover players that are going to see legitimate matchup issues in this game. I don't know where to point the way it's going to go. I don't know which unit to look at and say that is going to decide whether or not they win this football game or not, because others could show up and be just as or more important. So I'd love to talk about some of the ones that we might get, but I can't get away from that one because I know we're getting it.
Yeah, you know what I look at too is Oregon, I think, is as good a position as any team in this thing, including the teams that have the first round bye. Because if they really are healed up to the point where they can make a run here, I don't know. Like I watched these teams last year play first round games, and it really was not detrimental to their overall chances of making a run. And I think about them playing JMU at home. I just think about that the same way. This is going to sound disrespectful. It is what it is. Like, this is going to be such an athletic mismatch. I think about that the same way I would think about your final fall camp scrimmage before you get ready to go into the regular season. I think about the equivalent of that. It's different. It's a playoff game. It's a foreign opponent. They're keeping score. But I think about what you could do to work out any kinks, like you're healthy, you're reintroducing guys into your lineup. But the thing about Oregon and their side of the bracket versus maybe like a Texas A&M's side of the bracket is Ohio State and Georgia and A&M and Miami, they're all in the same side. And what I'm talking about there, forget about matchup for a second, zoom it way out. Just the talent rosters, just the athletic profiles that would concern you the most. All four of those are on one side, and Oregon's over there on the other side. And the ones they're on the side of are Indiana, which is not out-talenting you to death. They're just out-executing you to death. Alabama and Oklahoma are both fairly to moderately flawed teams, independent of the health situation with Alabama. And so, like, I think about the draw they got. I love the draw. Now, the trade-off there is if they are going to make it to the national championship game, after they play at home in Eugene, they will fly all the way to Miami, come home, fly to Atlanta, come home, then they'll fly back to Miami for the championship game. So I'm not saying frequent flyer miles won't be racked up, but you do get a little bit of extended period of time here. It's not every 6 days you're playing. I think the thing secretly sets up really well for Oregon, but that doesn't matter if they don't have that minimum baseline of health that everyone's been crossing their fingers up there and hoping they get come playoff time.
And I don't expect Dan Lanning to allow his team to do this, but there can't be a look-ahead factor because I do think one thing JMU has been for years is one of, if not the most physical G5 team out there. So they'll do their best to be able to match up with that aspect of Oregon's team, which they won't. They can't directly. And that's where you'll get some gap scheme runs. You'll get misdirection. You'll get quarterback boots, things of that nature. They'll try to offset it. You'll get movement on defense. But you said all those things about the bottom of the bracket, and I agree with all of them. And go back to our conversation a month or two ago, and we talked about those things that teams have, Josh, that you can't do anything about. The A&M pass rush, something nobody can really do anything about. The Ohio State receiver / quarterback passing game. Like, you're not covering those guys, not man-to-man. You may find ways to just keep them in front of you and neutralize the explosive plays. But then maybe you have the best football team that Oregon may have to run into. So you ask yourself, like McElroy and I are on different sides of this on our show. He got into an argument with a friend of ours that covers Notre Dame earlier this week, and they were talking about Auburn and Navy. And Greg saying, you can't tell me that you think Navy's a better team than Auburn. Look at the players that Auburn has. The guys are going to be in the NFL. I actually lean on the other side of that. I'll take the better football team than I will the better collection of talent. And I know what talent is capable of doing. I get it. And that's where it goes back to what we talked about, position groups or players that seemingly you can't do anything about. I haven't seen a group play collectively as good a football more times this year than I have Indiana. And that because of that, that might be the team that I would least like to play in this tournament. There are aspects of Georgia's team that I wouldn't want to have to face. And I think that they're inching closer to where Indiana is collectively. I mean, that offense is running on all cylinders right now. And I say that not because they're putting up 500 yards a game. I'm saying it because they can be successful doing so many different things. Well, Indiana's been doing that. They've been running the ball. They've been had a screen game. They've been throwing RPOs. They've been taking their shots down the field. They've had it, and they've been accomplishing that with a physical offensive line, a physical group of bonus bigs they can also add to be more beneficial there. A defense that's attacks that can be disruptive up front. I think Ohio State has better players. I think Miami has better players. I think Alabama has a more talented roster. Oklahoma has a more talented roster. Oregon has a more talented roster. I think Indiana is a better football team. And I'll be interested to see how those parts of this tournament play out as we move on.
As you watched Alabama, Iron Bowl, SEC championship game, you're missing key contributors. They were what they were on the field. You know what, you have like 2 weeks, I guess, between SEC championship and the time they will have gone to Oklahoma next Friday night to play against the Sooners. 2 questions. Number one, what kind of team do you think they're going to put on the field, physically and mentally? Number 2, like if I were to tell you, hey, I saw the future, fast forward a month, they're in the national title game. What will have to have happened for that run to occur?
Parker Brailsford has to be healthy, number 1. A couple of guys, because you can tell. I mean, you watch him on film, his left ankle is 3 inches thicker than his right ankle. I mean, it's in the way he's playing right now, the way he's able to anchor, it's not his normal self. And you heard me say early in the season, I thought he was their best football player through the first quarter of the season. So that's going to have to take place because he's that important. That unit is going to have to play clean football. Michael Carroll cannot continue to let edge rushers go inside when nobody else is home. You can't have pullers on counter not climb to the linebacker and allow him to stand there by himself and make a tackle behind the line of scrimmage. That the offensive line's got to get healthy. It's got to clean itself up. I would say a couple of guys on defense have to be healthy. Like Justin Jefferson's critical to them making that run because he brings elite speed to a defense that against different personnel groupings allows them to stay the same. Makes life a lot easier on Kane Womack. You're going to have to quit giving up freebies to teams, which they did a lot versus Georgia, not being able to pass off twists, busting assignments on 4 defenders slant to the right, 1 slants to the left, and a run hits right where he left that gap depleted for 8 or 9 yards. And I think the biggest thing that they have to have, Josh, if we're talking about Bama making a run in the national title game, you better have first half of the SEC championship game Ryan Williams. because let's be real, that makes them very different. Out of all the things that they've done, not been, complaints that they've had this season, guys that have played great, guys that have fallen off, guys that have been injured, in and out of the lineup, if they have that Ryan Williams, because keep in mind, who has their utility player been this year? It's been Jeremy Bernard in the backfield, lined up as a Y, as a tight end sometimes, a move guy. He's throwing passes. He's what they use for their gadget plays a lot of the times. Imagine letting Jeremy Bernard just be Jeremy Bernard, and Ryan Williams can be sort of your move utility player type guy, your Swiss Army knife with that kind of explosive speed and the capability that he brings. But the consistency's got to be there because Ryan Grubb can't keep dialing those things up if he doesn't know he's going to get it. And if they're going to be wasting plays, you're going to have drops, or you're going to not be on the same page as your quarterback, these games are too big to offer up those opportunities to come maybe misses multiple times in a game. So O-line healthy, O-line on same page, defense stay healthy, get healthy, and Ryan Williams from the first half of the SEC championship game is going to have to be there almost every series for the rest of the way through.
I want to ask you something really quick in just a second about just the general complaints about a lot of aspects of the sport that people tend to traffic in. You and I may have even trafficked in them a couple of times, but sort of the overarching, for lack of a better term, narrative, because there are better terms. I want to hit you about that in a second. First off, a lot of playoff games out there. If you guys want to get to those, well, you have to have a ticket unless you're really, really stealthy, and we don't endorse that kind of behavior on the show. You need tickets. I know you do. And that's why SeatGeek came to us and said, hey, looks like most people who watch your show are big sports fans. And I said, yeah, guys. They tend to be, absolutely. They said, well, do you mind telling them if they enter Pate 10 at checkout, they get 10% off their ticket order? And I said, sure. So I'm here to tell you, if you buy your tickets at SeatGeek and enter Pate 10, Pate 10 at checkout, you get 10% off your order. And hold on, I'm getting breaking news from Jesse. It doesn't even just have to be tickets to football games. I prefer it that way, but you could go get concert tickets. You could go watch the ballet. Cubelic loves a good ballet. The Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, great group of individuals this time of year. Again, allegedly. So Pate 10 at checkout, SeatGeek. All right, bring him back in. Last symphony you went to was, fill in the blank, go.
If you want to count Mannheim Steamroller live at the BJC
Who doesn't?
a couple years ago, that's kind of a symphony, I think.
Yeah, that's the legacy.
I grew up on
arena,
that. My
buddy.
dad's a huge fan. Took him to see that with my wife. It was. They're awesome, by the way. So if you get a chance and see Geeks offering up some Mannheim Steamroller, take advantage of that and go, especially during the Christmas holidays. Tough to beat.
I do respect that you still call it the BJCC. Do you want to guess what I saw the last time I was in the BJCC, which is the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center, henceforth changed to Legacy Arena for those of you unfamiliar? Do you want to guess what I saw?
Well, it's not. You can't beat me because I saw God play at the BJCC. So anytime you can go watch God, even though he did lose to Arizona, still. You saw God play basketball in that building. I don't know how you're going to beat that, but sure, go for it. Give it a shot.
Okay, let me try. 6-man Hell in a Cell match for the WWF Championship, Armageddon 2000.
That's nice.
Yeah. The 6 participants, you ask? Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, The Rock, Undertaker, Kurt Angle, Rikishi. 6 Hall of Famers, I think. Check me on
And
that, Jesse.
still not as good as the ECW show we saw across the street at Boutwell.
Well, yeah. And I didn't say it was. I did not say it was. But so both of us have seen memorable events in that building. What was I going to ask?
And for
you?
those that are questioning, it's God Sham God. He played basketball at Providence, folks. No, I'm not trying to say that I've witnessed God play at basketball.
Thank you. Thank you. It saves me a lot of responses in the comments later. So you do 3 hours of radio every morning. You take a lot of calls. You also do your own YouTube channel. You do games on Saturdays. So you say a lot about college football. You observe a lot about college football. You and I would say like 90% of the time, share opinions on the bigger picture issues, the big news ticket items. So it could be the way the portal works. It could be the way NIL works. It could be roster movement. It could be bowl opt-outs. It could be any of a number of things that people tend to complain about. I've noticed more and more lately, like earlier in the show tonight, we were talking about playoff expansion, which I think is stupid, but it looks like it will probably happen. So I tend to look at that and I say, man, that's something that's wrong with college football. Everybody has their list of things that are wrong with college football. Now, what I have avoided doing, that some people take the added step of doing, is talking about how all the sport's dying. Oh, this is the beginning of the, like Utah took the private equity infusion the other day. Oh, that's the beginning of the end of college football. Look, for obvious selfish reasons, my business model is pretty predicated on college football thriving, so I want college football to thrive. But even if I didn't, and I was just a volleyball fan who was observing college football from a distance, you see the key indicators just like I do. The numbers are only going up. Now, I've talked at length in the past about how current ratings, traffic, interest is sometimes well downstream of decision-making. So if there is horrifically bad decision-making happening now, you may not see the collateral damage and ratings and interest for several years. But I don't know. Like, you know me, I didn't want the playoff to expand, but the playoff expanded, and so far so good to me. I don't think it completely eroded the interest in the regular season. Now, lo and behold, the same people who expanded it once want to expand it again. We can't just stick at 12, which was one of my key concerns. But I don't know, when you look around and you hear the complaints, can you not look like I do and see the landscape and there's some blemishes, don't love everything I see, but holistically we seem to still be doing okay, do we not?
We're doing more than okay. I mean, the TV ratings are better than they've been in decades. And obviously shows like yours, other people who cover college football on different platforms are having a ton of success. If the sport didn't have the popularity that it did, I don't think those individuals would be able to survive or even thrive at times like they do. The good news is some of the same complaints are still here. We had people calling in our show this week wanting to bench Ty Simpson. So the Alabama fans are always going to complain about the starting quarterback. That's not going to change. So that tradition will continue. We can keep that one going. Jim Nantz can cut us a commercial like that one, a tradition like no other. The biggest complaint that I would have, and a lot of this, Josh, is I don't think people know what to complain about right now because we haven't retrained our brains to where we really are. Like, we'll talk about that tonight on the schedule show. When you look at some of these SEC schedules, like, guys, 10-2 is miles ahead of where it used to be. 9-3, hundreds of yards ahead of where you used to think it was. There's no way not to think that when you see what these teams are going to be up against in the near future. So, yeah, who's the starter, certain play calls, officiating. You know, we still have penalty vultures. Those things have been around forever. They are at their peak right now. I think penalty vultures are kind of like the hog population in Texas right now. It's getting a little out of control. We need to look into some helicopter action here.
All right. Yeah, see that those are real people. Those are real people. So we cannot go down that road.
We're not saying that.
It is illegal.
We're not saying that.
It is illegal. Even in Texas, it's illegal. So you know it's bad.
Did not know that. Not familiar with the hunting laws in Texas. So forgive me for that one, YouTube people. But I'll say my biggest complaint is what you brought up earlier. It's the decision making and the lack of thought that seemingly goes into massive decisions within this sport and multiple massive decisions the last 3 to 5 years. So transfer portal, we thought it was going to be awesome. We were going to take kids that had graduated. We were going to allow them to go play somewhere else. Let the fun begin. These guys that were, it was so unfair how they were being treated, and just, give him another chance. Johnny deserves one more shot at it. And then the floodgates open and teams can't keep rosters together. The red shirt rule. We're going to let guys play in 4 games. That way, if Billy twists his ankle in week 3, we're not going to ding him and give him a full season for that. And then here we go. We get to week 4, and head coaches are telling us of our TV meetings, well, you might not see that guy, that guy, that guy, or that guy because they told me they don't want to play football anymore. What? Yeah, you heard me. They said they don't want to play football anymore because they're trying to save their red shirt. They volunteered to practice, though, and hang around the facility and eat our food and still get their scholarship check, but they don't want to go in a game. So some of these massive decisions, whether it's NIL, I think, Josh, we could look at conference expansion right now.
Yes.
With where certain leagues are that maybe didn't get what they wanted when it came to the college football playoff. Is it fair to look at it and say, was that the best thing for some of these leagues? Maybe not. Playoff expansion that you mentioned, I don't think it's been bad at all. But certain people would say, let's go back to 4, and that'll probably be better. The decision-making by the committee and how they're putting teams in. I've told you this face to face. If that committee would sit down, instead of trying to invent data points and statistics and come up with their own PFF metrics for why teams are good, and you're playing Team A against Team B, and you'd sit there in front of a camera and say, you know why we put Alabama in front of Notre Dame? Because we believe they play better football. And if they played each other, we think they'd win. Next question. But they can't do that. And for whatever reason, they won't do that. So even the decision-making on how people try to talk about things in college football can sometimes be exhausting.
Cube Show got past 20,000 subs. So on your way out the door, are you even needing subs on your channel anymore? I mean, 20K after that's pretty much gravy, I'm told.
The push to 50,000 begins today.
So much as is the case around here with the push to 1 million, the push to 50,000.
You know what my YouTube channel is, Josh? It's the College Football Playoff. And we're at 4.
You're expanding. He's expanding.
Forget 8. Forget 10. We're going straight to 12. 50K or bust.
You've had a lot of ideas. You've had a
it.
lot of ideas, and I just want to tell you humbly, it's not the worst one you've ever had. Cole Cubelic, we appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. And that'll do it for us here as well. We are headed into a weekend where we got Army-Navy, but we're not on the road this weekend because we will very much be on the road next weekend. We're going to Alabama, Oklahoma, and Miami, Texas A&M, and it's going to be a long couple of days, but a fun couple of days because it's playoff season. Jim Nagy, the Oklahoma general manager, tweeted out a picture of a snowy stadium there in Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago. As soon as I got that extended forecast, and it showed highs in the low 60s, I shot it right back at him. Delete your account, buddy. No snow for this guy. No. We're going to have a nice, mild evening in Norman, Oklahoma. Now, you guys may win by 30, but it's not going to be because I'm trapped in a snow globe. No, I've done that. I don't need that in my life. All right, for Director Bradley, Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great weekend, and we will see you back here Sunday night. Until then, God bless.